Hey everybody, welcome back to 14 Rings at NFC East podcast, and we are recording our last mock draft prior to the NFL draft. And of course, you could say the best is saved for last because they were the best team in the NFL, winning the Super Bowl this past year, the Philadelphia Eagles, and we are so glad to have Zach on. Zach Ciavolella. Did I say your last name right? I've been practicing it in my head all night long.
Ciavolella, you're fine.
Ciavolella.
Zach is always good.
Anyway, Zach is one of the main heads at Philly Metro Sports, and he is here to talk Philly mock draft with Maurice, and I'm going to hand those to the microphone now.
First of all, thanks for coming back on, Zach. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be back, man.
Yeah, if you haven't heard Zach, we did a Philly Cooking with Maurice, our YouTube exclusive. We did that pre-Super Bowl, and a lot of things have happened since then. We won the Super Bowl. We had a parade, which is lovely. Our GM got hit in the forehead with a beer bottle. That was
Man,
he bleeds for the city though, so it's appreciated. It's appreciated. Free agency started, lost some guys, signed some guys, traded some guys, but today we're going to look forward to the NFL draft, right? All right. So
yeah, absolutely.
So altogether, we have 8 picks in this year's NFL draft, and we're going to start off with round 1, the 32nd pick. Now, Zach, when we do these, we don't include any type of trade, so I want to make that clear before we start. With the first pick in this first round, 32nd pick, I have the Eagles selecting James Pierce Jr., edge from Tennessee, 6'5", 245, ran a 4.4, 19 sacks in 3 years at Tennessee, led the SEC in sacks the last 2 seasons. Outside of Abdul Carter, this guy gets to the quarterback better than anyone else in college football the last 2 seasons. I think he's a difference maker. First of all, he fills the need for the Eagles. I think this is the guy that can keep the ball rolling in replacement of Josh Sweat. Athletic, speed rusher. The only weakness is, from the tape I've seen, is that's his go-to move, speed, because he's very athletic. He needs to learn some moves, but under Fangio, I think he can evolve. If they can make Jalen Hunt look a lot better towards the end of the season, I think they can do wonders for James Pierce. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, it's funny. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I had a pretty good feeling that James Pierce's name was going to come up, just with the way that it seems that some of the early draft talks have been going. Obviously, the Eagles' needs. There's a lot to like when you look at James Pierce. He is a stellar athlete. He's got great bend, and just when we've looked at some of the pass rushers in the past who have been particularly attractive prospects, when you looked at some weaknesses of other Eagles edge rushers of years past, there's been a lack of bend. So to have that natural athleticism, that flexibility in conjunction with that speed, it's super exciting when you look at James Pierce, right? Now, you wonder, why is a guy who is such an exciting potential pass rusher potentially going to be available at 32, right? The issue with him is, as exciting as his ceiling is, his floor is a little bit less so. Now, you already mentioned, Jalen Hunt, who was great coming out in his first year. We thought he was going to need some more time to develop, right?
That's what I thought too, yeah.
When they initially brought him out, we thought he was going to need some time to develop a little bit.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's a little bit of that to James Pierce. There's a little bit of concern that if he fails to, whether it is, work on his technique enough, or really the biggest thing is he has to put on some weight and add some strength. There's a little bit of concern that he's going to have a little bit more of that situational pass rusher kind of floor. And that's kind of the last thing I think Eagles fans want to hear at the moment, just after the free agent addition last year of Bryce Huff. That's not really what fans are going to want to hear. But when you look at this guy's ceiling, and if he needs to put on weight, I trust, being in the Eagles organization, they're going to be a crew who's going to be able to help him get to where he needs to be, unlike what Huff had with the Jets. So if you're looking at a project like that, I'm willing to bet on his ceiling versus his floor. So a guy like James Pierce, I think, would be a stellar fit for the Eagles at 32.
Did you have any names at 32?
Yeah, no. So there's a couple of guys who I think are really interesting. Obviously you said that we don't really trade down in here. There's some interesting. I think that might be what they end up ultimately doing. But if they stay at 32, the guy who I think a lot of Eagles fans are hoping stays there for Howie Roseman and company is Malachi Starks. Defensive chess piece, kind of like Keon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. The Eagles don't really go after safeties in the first round, but we've seen them kind of change their philosophy on a few other things. So potentially that's a fit there. He's a short tackler, high IQ, another bulldog. I would say if there's one name kind of to keep an eye on, and I'm probably going to butcher his name, but that's the irony considering my own last name. But Alec Ayamaner out of Stanford, actually, wide receiver, big body wide receiver.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people aren't probably thinking the Eagles are going to go wide receiver first round.
Yeah.
I don't foresee this as a precursor move to moving off of A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith. I want to be clear about that up front.
Okay.
But they need to figure out that third wide receiver, right? That's been an issue that's plagued the Eagles for season after season after season. And you look at a guy like and big body, high IQ, just great general size. He's able to switch up his speeds. He's got great hands. He knows how to get off of press coverage. He's just a complete and total package as a wide receiver, kind of like AJ Brown in a way, right? So to be able to have a second guy who is so diverse in what they bring to the table as a wide receiver, I think that's something that you can't overlook as a possibility for the Eagles.
See, I just see you guys not need. I mean, I like Johnny Wilson. You traded for Jahan Johnson. He looks like he solidified himself as the third wide receiver. He's not a bad third wide receiver. I actually have a sleeper here, and this guy should go higher based off of talent, but because of a checkered pass, he might slide. And I'm going to go with Mike Green, edge out of Marshall for you guys. I don't know if he's going to fall that far.
I didn't in my mocks. I didn't see him dropping to 32.
But I'm just saying he does have some baggage from his past, and you guys like to take on players that have baggage, despite with the talent that goes along with it.
Yeah, so I mean, depending on what type of baggage that is, the Eagles certainly have. It's funny because you look at the Eagles are such an interesting organization because you look, and obviously you're talking about guys like Jalen Carter is the big name who we're talking about in that situation of having baggage, right? And then you hear Harry Roseman talk about issues of domestic violence, for instance, right? So, and it's a complete 180 from that conversation there, right? So, the one thing that I think is particularly clear about the Eagles and what they do in these situations where these guys have these checkered pasts is that they do their due diligence, right? Yeah. So they're very thorough in their process of reviewing these players and what exactly happened in that incident. Speaking about where that player is now, not just as a player, but as a person, more importantly, and really getting a clear understanding of that. As a player, Mike Green is ferocious, right? Yes. You're talking about, big body, another guy, he's like 6'4", 6'5", real stout run defender, somebody who really could set the edge, which was a major issue. There weren't a ton of issues for the Super Bowl winning Eagles, obviously, but setting the edge in the run game, that did show up throughout various points during the season as a bit of an issue. And Mike Green, that's something that he can definitely help out with. So if he does fall, I wouldn't necessarily rule him out.
I could also see you trading up for him too.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's the kind of the position the Eagles are in. They historically like to trade down from this spot, but they do have all the extra comp picks that they've been able to pick up, right? Yeah. And you're in a position where this kind of, well, which way do you go? They obviously lost a lot through free agency. Now, do you worry about replacing them with as many bodies as possible, kind of go that quantity over quality? Or do you have your guys that you're dead set on your list, and instead of going for 8 possibilities, you go for 5 definites, right? And is that the solution that Philadelphia goes after? And if they've identified him as the fit, as the solution, at a particular spot, I would not put it past Terry Roseman and company to move up, whether it's for a guy like Mike Green, whether it's for a guy like Malachi Starks, or Kenneth Grant out of Michigan is another name we potentially look at in that case.
Yeah. Mal, Earl, you guys have anything to say?
Yeah, I'll go first because I'm sure Earl probably has some other names. But I also went James Pierce Jr. for you guys from Tennessee. I think he would be a great pickup for you guys, addresses a need. And I agree with Zach, where like I would bet you that I think he will hit his ceiling with the Eagles. You guys do great work with your defensive line there, and they will set him up for success. So that's who I had you guys take in round 1. What about you, Earl?
Yeah, I had you guys getting Pierce as well. I think for y'all definitely needed an edge, especially from what y'all lost in the front. A sneaky trade that you could do, Mike Green would be nice, but I could definitely see y'all with that 32 pick also getting Kenneth Grant, get another Michigan guy, pair heir to Brandon Graham.
Yeah, definitely a couple trade up guys. I'm just going to mention them for the heck of it because we're tossing out names. I do see the possibility of them trading down to the second round, going after a guy like Darius Alexander out of Toledo, because he's just that versatile defensive line prospect guy who can move around different techs. And you look at the impact that the Eagles have seen over the years just with multiple movable pieces on that defensive line. That's going to be the kind of guy that I think they're going to pick up at some point in the draft. It's just a matter of first, second, third, so on and so forth, what round they get that person
in. I like that for 1 second. What was the name you threw out there, Zach?
Yeah, so that is Darius Alexander out of Toledo. He's an interior defensive lineman.
Go ahead. All right. So I actually have another versatile D lineman coming off the board in the second round for the Eagles. Actually, now we talked about baggage. This guy doesn't have baggage, more so as he's in that Jalen Carter mold where you don't want to piss him off on the football field. I'll just say that. With the second round pick 64, I have the Eagles drafting Shamar Turner, defensive tackle from Texas A&M, 6'3", 290, ran a 4.8, 10 sacks in 4 years at Texas A&M, second in the SEC in pressures. He was actually could have came out last year as a defensive end, stayed this year, played with another Shamar Stewart. Yeah, thank you, Earl. Shamar Stewart, and he actually put on about 20 pounds, became a defensive tackle. And I think he's a versatile defensive tackle, kind of in that mold of a Jomo, but a little bit more skilled, a little bit more athletic, quicker. I really like him in the second round. Now, some of my mocks had him going a little before the Eagles. Some of them have him going right at the end of the second round where the Eagles pick. I like his potential, especially on that defensive line. Jalen Carter is going to get double teamed. So whether it's usually Jordan Davis is not on the field unless it's first down or on a run down. So it's usually if now going forward, it's probably going to be a Jomo as of right now with the exit of Milton Williams. So I like Turner. As you can see, my first 2 picks, I'm picking 2 guys who I believe can start immediately and make an impact immediately. And I'm going off of talent. And I'm going off of speed and athleticism as well. So what do you think, Zach?
Yeah, Shamar Turner, definitely an interesting player, like you said, a bit versatile on that defensive line there. Not the longest prospect on that defensive line, but we've seen the Eagles target players like that in the past and have success, right? So definitely, I think a viable possibility. And Texas A&M, I love defensive players out of Texas A&M. They come across so often. There's always a gem, I feel like, every single season. So definitely someone to watch there. I actually like, and this is a bit of a risky pick, but depending on who they go with in the first round, assuming that it's not Malachi Starks, Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, I think is someone.
I like that.
Now he had that partial torn ACL.
That's who I had as well.
It obviously threw off, his season, of course. But I mean, you want to talk about a thumper of a safety. I mean, this is a very good athlete, somebody who he'll knock you right off your position. Fluid hips, he's a guy who can really work his way all over the field. Someone who can be a real difference maker, not only as a hard hitter, but as a short tackler as well, which is something that I think the Eagles really learned that lesson when they saw the difference in having a short tackler. When you're looking at their linebacker position, when they went from what they've had for years to Zach Bond, when you're adding that short tackler, now they're seeing that in that safety group as well. So after moving off of CJ Gardner-Johnson, bringing in a guy like Kevin Winston Jr., I think is definitely a vibe there.
Maurice, I think you're muted.
Oh, my bad. Mal, what you got?
Yeah, I also had you guys taking Kevin Winston Jr. as well.
Okay.
Killer athlete, very good safety. However, there is some questions regarding his injury history and his lack of starting. But he was an absolute difference maker at Penn State before that injury happened. So I could see you guys taking the gamble on him. He has true talent, and that's really all the Eagles need. Let Vic Fangio work with him, and I think he'll be a star for you guys, honestly.
So,
Okay.
Okay. I was going to actually go D-line as well, but I'm actually going to go with TJ Sanders. 50 tackles, 4 sacks, 1 pass defended last season. Defensive lineman out of South Carolina, 6'4", 297. Look, you guys need to replenish the defensive line. I don't see why you don't go for defensive line, and I like his fit for you guys. Big body guy.
Well,
I actually had you guys going offense. I actually had you guys getting Mason Taylor, tight end from LSU. Second generation Taylor, Jason Taylor, former football player. The guy, he's a really good receiving tight end. He can definitely do some run blocking as a whole. Not sure what y'all guys are going to do with Goddard, but trying to get that tight end room going, especially with a young tight end like Mason Taylor, would be something very key to give Jalen Hurts someone of a security blanket to throw to.
yeah, I have the Eagles taking a tight end later in the draft, but with Dallas Goedert, I can easily see them moving on from him after this season. Same issue they have this season. You can't pay everybody.
Agreed.
And actually, I think Dallas Goedert has been underutilized here simply because of all the other weapons. I think he's a talented tight end, maybe top 5, and I'm not just being a homer on that. I think he has the skills to be a top 5 tight end in the league, barring injuries. But real quick before I move on, let me ask you, Zach, are the Eagles fine, or are they, if they don't draft a safety, are they fine with Blankenship and Sidney Brown?
I mean, fine. Maybe they're fine with those two, but they're not in a position where they're looking to be fine in their position groups, right? They're looking to excel. This is not a team that's satisfied after 1 Super Bowl or 2 within the past 10 years. They're not satisfied where they're at. They're looking to compete again for a Super Bowl this year, next year, the next 3 years. This is something where they're going to want to be great at every position group. You can't necessarily do that year in and year out, but it's going to be the kind of thing where they're, and for the most part, they're still pretty sound at almost every single position group. But I would call safety a concern, as relative to, corner, relative to linebacker. Obviously edge rush is a pretty big area of need, but when you're looking at this defense, I would definitely say that safety's among those top areas of improvement. But with that being said, Reed Blankenship has been a fantastic player for the Eagles so far, just a real absolute bright spot. A lot of people have come out saying, what a great leader he is. Obviously, Darius Slay had his infamous comments about Reed's leadership, which was a compliment to Reed Blankenship. It just wasn't taken well by another former teammate. But and then you look at Sidney Brown, what's really interesting, I love watching him on the field, first of all. But what's exciting about him, too, is that he just gets the energy level up for all of his teammates. There's something about when one of your guys just absolutely lays out an opposing player, just a big hit, something about that big hit that just revitalizes the defense, right? That just kind of shoots that adrenaline into the entire squad. And I think that's the value you get with a guy like Sidney Brown. But if we're talking about, all the, let's call it the other 80% of his snaps, every given Sunday, there's a little bit more cause for concern. Just as a coverage safety, he's just not quite there yet. I like him as a young, fluid, I wouldn't even mind him as a starter necessarily, but a opposite read, I don't feel great about it. So I would be interested in finding whether it is another veteran to kind of add into the rotation or to look into the draft for a safety. I think that the Eagles should have some interest in that.
Okay. Well, I am going to go secondary with my next pick in the third round. It was actually between this guy and Dorian Strong, but a lot of mocks he wasn't there. So I went with potential. I went with measurables. So in the third round with pick 96, I have the Eagles drafting Zay Frazier, cornerback from University of Texas in San Antonio. 6'3", tall, 185, ran a 4.3. 6 interceptions in his last season at UTSA. Only had one good year of real tape to work with, but 6'3". I think in this point in the NFL, you need bigger corners. That's just my take. A guy who can not. Now I will say this: his weakness coming out was he's tall, but he has short arms. That's one of the measurables where I just don't really care about. I don't really care about that. You can have small hands, you can have short legs. I don't care about that. It's about production. He has a nose for the football. He's a ball hawk, if you will. You could say that. I like his potential. Now, I think the question for me was, what do you prioritize early in the draft, corner or safety? Now, based off of them trading C.J. Gardner-Johnson, what they've talked about, how we've said so far about Sidney Brown, I stayed away from safety. I've never been so far wowed by Keely Ringo. So with a third round pick, Zay Frazier, I would say let them two battle it out in camp and see who comes out on top. What do you guys say?
Yeah, Frazier's an interesting prospect. I think that there's kind of a wide range that he could go, kind of for the reasons that you mentioned. Just what you saw on tape is certainly impressive. The wingspan concerns are there. How real are they when he's kind of playing inside the receiver's jersey in a sense, because he keeps that coverage so close? That you can argue definitely. But I think that he is an impressive prospect, but I think you might be able to get him in that fourth round, or at least that's a risk I'm willing to take. I definitely could see someone reaching up into the third round for him just because of that competitive nature that he has, that ability. And again, he may not have the length, but he has the height, which does kind of counteract for some of those length issues as well. So you kind of mix that with his athleticism. Yeah, you're talking about a guy who, could have a pretty high ceiling as an outside corner. So definitely somebody of interest there. For me, looking into the third round, this is where I start to look, where we can kind of improve, this edge a little bit. And we've seen Howie Roseman kind of get a bit experimental in the third round, kind of go after these high potential guys in the past. And it's bitten Howie before, but now they have Vic Fangio. Right. And so I think that changes some things. That changes the defensive philosophy in the sense, not only what type of players you go for, but I have a bit more faith in the team's ability to develop these defenders. Right. So the guy that I'm looking at, UCLA edge defender, Oluwafemi Oladejo.
I'm
He's
sorry.
a 3-star prospect.
That is a mouthful. That is more than row,
Said his
whatever
name
the guy.
perfectly too.
You know what? As much of a mouthful as the
Jalen
name is, you
Hamstring.
watch this kid and his athleticism is equally just as much of a jaw-dropping experience.
Wow.
He's got extremely long arms. He's, I would say, a near elite athlete. He's extremely raw. That's the problem. That's why he's so far down, on these draft boards. He potentially could go, I would say, within the 15 or so picks above where Philadelphia picks at 96 in the third round. But just if he's able to unlock 80% of his potential, you're looking at, I think, an everyday starter at the very least. But you could be looking at someone who maybe their key role is an elite rotation edge rusher, or maybe you're looking at somebody who can play that near every down. But just an absolute fantastic base from an athletic profile perspective, and somebody who I think that Vic Fangio could mold into, a near star potentially.
Okay. I actually went with safety on this one, guys. I went with Jonas Sanker from Virginia, 6 foot, 206 pounds. Ran a 4.48 in the combine. Has good measurables outside of the bench press. Look, he's a good. He's been pretty much a 3-year starter for the Virginia UVA Cavaliers. Last season, he had 9 tackles for losses, 98 total tackles, 2 sacks, 4 passes defended, 1 interception, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble return for a touchdown. No, sorry, 2 fumble recoveries, 1 return for a touchdown. If I'm thinking of a guy that you can plug and play, this feels like a guy that you can do that with.
Okay. All right. Anything else, guys?
You can go
Yeah.
now.
You want me to go first?
Mhm.
I actually had you guys taking a guard in this round. Tate Ratledge from Georgia. You know how he loves his Bulldogs.
Yeah,
And
it sure does.
yeah, there's a potential that Tate Ratledge can be competing to be a starter by midseason, I would say. 6'6", the guy's huge. Shores at that offensive line. Really powerful guy, as shown like on his tape that he's able to meet the physical demands of the NFL. However, he does have some injury concerns, so it would just be making sure he can get through that. But I have you guys taking that guard there because it's going to be one of the best players available, and that's how you guys get your success, and that's how you continue your success. So I could see Howie making that move.
Yeah, I went interior lineman as well, guard, and I actually got another guard from Georgia. I went Jarrett Wilson. He's 6'3", about 310. He's not one of those like taller guards, but he's definitely one that can play very solid in case you want to plug him in. And I will have to give credit to like Georgia, especially with their ground game, where they really created some good interior linemen that can really work with the run game. So he's definitely a guy I can see y'all picking just in case if Ratledge isn't there, you can get Wilson there and be good to go. Like there's no problem. So
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility for Philadelphia. We've seen them kind of just build that line and make that a focal point. Obviously, building through the trenches is the key for the Eagles. The one thing I would say, I think especially Tate Ratledge interests me. If he is there, I think that, JT, you're exactly right. That's the big question. Is he going to be there at 96? But if he is, he's definitely a name that I think could interest them. We've seen them kind of go after these guys offensive linemen who have suffered injuries in the past. Like Landry Dickinson is obviously the premier example of this. And bet on these guys and be able to turn them into stars. And there has been some concern over the right guard position moving forward for the Eagles. Obviously, they lost Mekhi Becton, this past offseason to the Chargers. And so now, what does the future at right guard look like for Philadelphia? There's been some reluctancy to kind of just hand over the keys to Tyler Steen. They bring in Kenyon Green, who is not proven in the NFL yet. Obviously he's come in with a high pedigree and has shown some flashes, but there's been a lot of negative flashes that Kenyon Green's shown as well. So to be able to bring in a guard, first of all, I think is definitely something to watch in these middle rounds. But Tate Ratledge is a great name to watch on top of that.
Yeah. I actually have a guard going. I actually have a tackle going in the next pick. But for the fourth round pick, I want to go back to what Earl was saying earlier about tight end. For us, our basketball fans in here, you might recognize the name. With the fourth round pick at 134, I have the Eagles drafting Terrence Ferguson, tight end from Oregon, 6'5", 247, 39-inch vertical. Ran a 4.6, 16 touchdowns in 4 seasons at Oregon, averaging 11 yards 11.5 yards, a catch, and he was the fastest tight end at the combine.
Yep.
I really like I like the athleticism. Once again, I'm sticking on athleticism. I'm sticking on speed. This team has always been a what do they call it? Above the rim type team. They always play above the rim. They always are athletic and fast. If we're going to think about drafting our Dallas Goedert replacement, I think this is a perfect guy to just let him sit there for a year, let him absorb everything, maybe do some things towards the end of the season, but let him just sit there and see how the offense runs, see how Dallas Goedert has played in this offense for years, and see what you got next season. I love his athleticism. Um, it reminds me of I'm going to compare him to him, but his athleticism reminds me of a young Tony Gonzalez. Um, I
That's some high
really,
praise right there.
it's high praise. I'm not comparing them. I'm not comparing. No, I'm just talking about the athleticism part.
No, I got you.
The only weakness about Ferguson is he needs to play through contact more.
Agreed.
Anytime he gets a body on him, he kind of folds up. That's something you can learn. Dog mentality. That's what he's to learn in the NFL. So, Zach, what you think about that?
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of these tight ends that the Eagles are going to be paying a close eye to. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they do move on from Dallas Goedert. I know the word out there is that they're looking to potentially trade him. I had the opportunity to talk to Dallas actually right before the Super Bowl, and he loves it in Philly, man. So if it's a matter of negotiation, I think that there is some potential there. I'm not going to speak, about, on that man on his behalf about, his money or anything like that. But just with the way that he feels about Philadelphia and the way that Philadelphia feels about him, I think that there is a path to a resolution that doesn't involve him leaving the team this year. In terms of the long term, I'm not quite so certain. So that's when you start looking at some of these draft prospects. And a guy like Terrence Ferguson, I mean, you think about how electric and explosive Dallas Goedert's been, in the receiving game, and that's Terrence Ferguson, right? Kind of a similar issues where, coming out, Goddard wasn't a fantastic blocker. Ferguson's a pretty rough blocker. There's a lot, and that kind of comes to, what you were saying about that. There's a general need to increase strength and increase the willingness to chip and to fight and be physical. Maurice, kind of goes right to what you were saying. But it's a guy who I think, especially if you're looking at, third round and lower, like if he happens to be there in the fourth, especially if he's there in the fourth, I think he's great value there. But he's someone who I think that if you're looking at some of these tight end options in this draft, that Philadelphia will have a close eye on. I like him in the fourth just because that blocking ability means a lot to me, and I know it does for Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So I would have him going right where you picked him, Maurice, and I think he'd be a great pick for Philadelphia at that spot. Now, for what I was looking at this spot, there's a few different ways that that Philadelphia can go. Obviously, once you kind of get into this fourth round, this is when you start really, obviously you're always trying to identify the best player available, but this is when you're especially looking for these diamonds in the rough, obviously, right? And so when you get down to that kind of 134 kind of range, who exactly is that? I also went with a tight end, but I actually went with Benjamin Urasek. So this is another Georgia Bulldog, 6'4", 245. This guy is a little bit more on that Jack Stoll side of a tight end, where he's more so that solid blocking tight end, and he needs to work a little bit more in terms of his aggressiveness as a receiver, right? So especially when it comes to attacking the ball in the air, there's a lot of room for improvement for him there. But if you're talking about a guy who's going to be able to help kind of set that edge, that tush push isn't going anywhere yet. You're going to need some guys out there to block. You're going to need some guys to, to set up behind Jalen Hurts to help push through. You're going to need guys who are going to be able to work alongside, the rest of Philadelphia's tight end core, right? Which if they do move on from Dallas Goedert this year, Grant Calcaterra is, effectively the default number one, unless they find another guy through trade, late stage free agency, or obviously the draft, right? So I would imagine in that situation, if they do wait until probably the 4th round or later to draft a tight end, Calcaterra probably gets the bulk of the work. We know his inefficiencies as a blocker. That's why I think you kind of get this defensive, in a sense, chess piece tight end to kind of mirror Grant Calcaterra, and Benjamin Usurek fits that like a glove.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think for me, I'm gonna, you guys lost a couple edges in the offseason. I'm gonna go with Tyler Barron from Miami. 6'4", 258, 4.62 in the combine, has good measurables outside of that. Was a 4-year starter at Tennessee, played at University of Miami this past year. 38 total tackles, 11 for loss, 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Depth piece at this point. That's what you guys need on the edge. I think that fills it for you guys there.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, so in the 4th round, I actually had you guys going corner. I had you guys taking Noel Williams from California.
I
He
like him.
actually, he led the country in interceptions last year. So he's a ball hawk. He's got great hands. He could read the quarterback. However, he does lack some athleticism. He's an overall average athlete. Doesn't really have the speed, so he could be getting beat deep in man coverage. However, who better to help humble you than A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith? So why not bring him in and see what he can do? Clearly, he can make a difference. He clearly has a good read, and I think he'd be a good pickup for you guys in the 4th round.
Bro?
I actually have you guys going defense interior. I have you guys getting Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. 6'1", 340. He's a tank. He can get off the ball pretty quickly. He can block. He can really just block shed and just really just disrupt the QB pocket as well as just the run game interior. I think for what y'all need as a whole, y'all definitely want to make sure to keep that front 4 as solid as possible. So if you plug in Caldwell with his 340 range and you really can't move this guy off the ball and he can just stay where he needs to and get upfield, he'll be a defensive terror for you guys, especially if y'all can get him in the 4th round.
Imagine if he got him and Jordan Davis on the line at the same time.
Crazy work.
Good luck.
Diabolical.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on. I teased it. Round 5, pick 161. Now, these are late 5th round picks. So basically, essentially, you're talking about a 6th round draft pick, basically. With round 5, pick 161, I have the Eagles drafting Logan Brown, tackle from Kansas, 6'6", 311. This guy's played on both sides of the line. He's played right tackle and left tackle. I don't think they just restructured Lane Johnson's contract. I don't think it's time yet to find his replacement. But if you can get a guy who has the skill set, and the Eagles have that secret weapon in their organization called Jeff Stoutland. If he can get his hands on a guy like Logan Brown, I truly believe the Eagles could have a starter down the road. Once again, athletic. The one thing I look for as an Eagles fan, I look for in a draft when it comes to offensive linemen is mobility. How good are they off their feet? Are they light on their feet? Can they move when on run blocking? Because that's essential for the Eagles. It's always been like that for many, many years. I want an offensive tackle or guard who can really move and shed up and not only shed a block, but push the line forward. Because we have Saquon Barkley, we have one of the best running backs in the league. I really like the skill set of Logan Brown. I don't really see a weakness. Once again, this is basically a 6th round pick, so I like the potential. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up Logan. He was actually someone that I was looking at with the pick. Really intriguing prospect. I did ultimately go with an offensive lineman who Stoutland can build up. Before I get to him, I do just want to talk about Logan Brown real quick. The biggest thing with him is he needs to build his fundamentals, right? He needs to just get the core competencies of the position down pat. And who better to teach you that than Jeff Stoughton, right?
Yeah.
So, no, I think that's definitely someone who the Eagles could look at some point in this draft. But for me, the name that I was looking at, again, I went with a similar pick, an offensive lineman. I went with tackle Emory Jones Jr. out of LSU, except he was a tackle at LSU. He's going to switch to guard, most likely, at the NFL level, right? So this is where I feel Philadelphia gets that guard depth. You know, you're looking at somebody in Jones Jr. who really seems like your typical proto package, you know, tackle, move into guard once they get to the next level. You know, he's got the power. You know, he's a bit slower in the feet. You know, these are some issues that we've seen before with some linemen that the Eagles have been able to kind of solve these problems with, but he's so powerful. He's got great length. You know, this is somebody who you put him in at guard and he can just maul that defensive line, right? So this is somebody who I think you could put him in, and you know, if you don't feel great about Steen, maybe Emory Jones isn't ready to take over that starting spot this year or next year. But by year 3, this is a guy who potentially could be a starting lineman as a guard, you know, in the NFL.
Yeah. All right, Lucas.
Look, at this point, I'm gonna go with what you guys get. I'm not deep diving into the draft after round 4. I'm
Appreciate
sorry.
it, Lucas. You could have threw
I'm
any
being-
name out there, but I appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
Mal.
Yeah, I had you guys taking tackle Logan Brown as well from Kansas. I think that'd be a good pickup for you guys. I think you said it perfectly and hit everything on the head there, Maurice. So I don't have anything to add.
No, girl.
I actually had you guys going safety. I had you guys getting Jalen Reed from Penn State. 6 foot, 212. Over this past, let's see. In 13 games, this guy had 46 tackles, 32 were solo. He had 4 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, and a pass breakup. I think y'all really can get y'all safety, especially with replacing Gardner Johnson. And at the same time, still getting a guy who's very active in the secondary. He can be physical when he wants to. He can come up to tackle. He can make plays, especially with the ball in the air. And just really just trying to create a solid and physical foundation for what y'all would want to do. And I think Vic Fangio would like a guy like Jalen Reed.
I just don't know if he's gonna fall that far, Earl. That's my thing.
In the mock draft, he fell to that point.
Yeah. Late 5th round, anybody could fall.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to stay on the offensive line. With the 5th pick, 164, I had the Eagle drafting Seth McLaughton. Now he's a center. Now he went to Alabama, transferred to Ohio State. He missed his last season from a torn Achilles. But unlike Logan Brown, the fundamentals are there with Seth. And if he can get healthy, I would really be comfortable with him just having a backup center. No, I don't want Landon Dickerson moving over to center. They had that issue in the playoffs. I just want a full-time backup center. And at this point, in the 5th round, you get really lucky.
Not?
Yeah, in the 5th round, you get really lucky if you can get a starter. At this point, you're really drafting for backup. I mean, that's the best case scenario in a lot of cases. So, what do you guys think, Zach?
Hey, I mean, listen, the Eagles had great success picking a center in the 6th round in the past.
Yes,
you know?
that's true.
If anyone can pick a center late, you know, it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yep.
For me, you know, getting this late, it's about 2 things. It's about rotational depth and it's about special teams. You know, before we get to picking a special teams guy, there's a rotational depth player on that defensive line, Cameron Jackson out of Florida, who just a monster of a man. He's 6'6", 328 pounds. This is a guy who, you know, in that similar role to Jordan Davis, just filling that A gap, just completely run stuffing. And I know we have that role on the team with Jordan Davis. I don't know what the future holds for Davis and the Eagles.
Yeah,
I would think that they may want to keep these Bulldogs together, but if there is a Bulldog who kind of looks like he might be on the outside looking in so far, it could be Jordan Davis. So if you're talking about a guy who could potentially replace that role in the next 2 to 3 years, something such as that, I think you're looking at Cameron Jackson as a nice cheap alternative.
Okay. You got anything, Lucas?
Nah, I've already told you. I've tapped out on this one. But
right.
I'm supporting your choices, sir.
All
As a
right.
real friend should.
Thank you for the support. Appreciate it. Now,
Mhm.
Yeah, so I actually had you guys grabbing another safety with this pick, RJ Mickens from Clemson. Versatile, high football IQ, big willingness against the run, and he's really good at man coverage against tight ends. So I think he'd be a nice little chess piece there for your secondary. So I liked that pick for you guys.
Earl.
I actually had you guys going running back. He could be a special teams guy. I had y'all getting Bayshaw Tootin from Virginia Tech. Really fast running
Ooh,
back.
that's the fast guy, isn't it?
Yep. If y'all want like
Okay.
a little Speedy Gonzalez, especially in the kickoff range,
Darren
you could do.
Sproles 2.0.
You can plug him in special teams, but if you want to put him in the backfield, he can hit his head on the goalpost. So late round steal.
It's funny you mentioned that, Earl, because last week when we had Lake Lewis on, I mentioned a kickoff specialist, drafting a kickoff specialist, and I thought about him just for his kickoffs and just being that Turpin type player for us. And I thought about it, I really did, but they're going to have a fight on their hands for who's the returner. Actually, right now, I don't even know, but they're going to have somebody, especially with the new rules. They're going to have a returner there. All right,
It needs to be Cooper DeJean. I need Cooper DeJean returning
Not on
kicks full time
kickoffs.
now.
Not on kickoffs.
Vic Fangio is not going to let that happen.
I'm just saying, it would be for me. This isn't for you guys. This is for me. I need to see.
He's trying to sabotage. Don't pay him any mind.
No, sabotage, never.
Yeah, it's sabotage.
You're still not mad that we got him with your pick?
Hey, look, we got two really good role players. We just got to let them develop. I'm not going to be mad.
55 for the mind.
Look,
Fair
Chef
enough,
Peters has not let us go the wrong way, and who knows? We still might not have picked him if we had the 40th pick. So who knows?
Well, I don't think that's necessarily a compliment to Washington, but you're right.
You just gave a compliment. You did.
Yeah, you just straight snatched it, bro.
All right, let's move on.
Look, I am not 100% tonight. My brain is kind of bleh.
You're good, bro. No worries.
This is not my best flu game.
Yeah, all right. So with the very next pick, 165 in the fifth round, I have the Eagles drafting Kobe King, linebacker from Penn State, 6'1", 236, ran a 4.6, 97 tackles, and 3 sacks in 2024 last season. The only thing that really jumped out to me was great tackler. This is a depth piece. This is a special teamer. We lost Oren Burke, so that elevates Jeremiah Trotter. So they need to fill that position on special teams. I think Kobe King is the right player for the Eagles. Like I said, just a great tackler. That's all you really need. That's all you really need on special teams. Stay disciplined, stay in your lanes, and tackle. That's all I'm looking for. Zach, so what you think?
Yeah, I'm not mad at it at all. Kobe King's definitely a guy that I looked at that position. Somebody who I think not only can he'd begin his journey in the NFL as a special teams player, and then could potentially work his way up into maybe that first linebacker off the bench. A few years down the line. There's definitely I think some potential as someone who can kind of be a darling in that Vic Fangio defense just because of his sure tackling ability, right? So the person I was looking at with this pick, similar thought, in terms of a special teams player, his tackling is definitely a plus when you look at the power. He's got to shore up his ability a little bit because he tends to move faster than he can kind of process the tackle, if that makes sense. Well, that's Caleb Ransaw out of Tulane. He's a safety, right? So he's big, strong. He's listed as a safety. He's really general defensive back. Can play some safety, can play some nickel. More importantly, he's going to be a special teams dynamo for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? You're talking about elite athleticism. We're talking about great size of the position, great length. Again, that tackling power is great for him. He had a very low missed tackle percentage each of the last 2 seasons. So if he can put this all together, then maybe we can start talking about him playing, in actual defensive snaps. But as far as special teams, I think Caleb Bransall is going to be a potentially elite special teams player for some team out there. I think the Philadelphia Eagles would be smart to bring him in.
And he'd be playing with his buddy Quinshawn.
No, I like
Quinshawn Mitchell?
Like yeah, Quinyon Mitchell, yeah.
Quinyon
I like
Mitchell,
that pick,
my
actually.
bad.
Yeah. Mal, Earl, you got anything?
You go ahead,
Yeah. Yeah. In this round, I had you guys selecting a defensive tackle, Cam Jackson from Florida. This dude is huge. He's 6'6", 342 pounds. He's an absolute unit. Absolute unit. And he is very good against the run. However, conditioning is a little bit of a concern for him, so he wouldn't be an every down player. However, I think that with his size, with his ability, he'd be a great late round pickup for you guys to kind of be a good depth piece on your defensive line. So that's why I had Cam.
Okay. Earl?
I actually had you guys going tackle. I pretty much had y'all select the giant titan. Jalen Travis from Iowa State. He's 6'8", 340.
Ooh.
Dude is massive. He can be athletic at times. And if you really want somebody to protect her blind side, he could work with that. But if y'all want to create that physicality, running nature like y'all do, he'll definitely be somebody that can really just move people off the screen. And that will continue the lineage that y'all have where your offensive line are like titans. And if y'all seen Attack on Titan, they're huge titans. So there you go.
I actually like based off what you're kind of describing Mekhi Beckham, so why play him at guard? You can plug him in at guard there.
I think for his tape, he's more of a tackle and more base. If they want to work him in as a guard, that would just be crazy work because you got to make sure his weight is where it needs to be. If y'all keep him on the outside, I mean, Saquon can bounce it to the outside on the right side and you're good to go. It's just, I think getting that lineman in the late round for y'all will definitely help, especially with y'all O-line coach, who's pretty much is like a guru of the O-line. So, yeah, I think he will fit well as a tackle for you guys, especially with that big presence that he has.
Listen, Jeff Stoutland got Mekhi Becton paid. Nobody wanted Becton.
True.
Yeah, nobody wanted him. Yeah, so even late in this draft, drafting an offensive lineman is not a bad pick. It's simply not because of the coach that you have instilling the right technique and the right fundamentals with these players. All right, so let's get into the last pick. Another fifth round pick, our fifth round pick, pick 168. I have the Eagles drafting Ty Felton, receiver from Maryland, 6'1", 183. Once again, ran a 4.3. 94 yards per game. Great athlete. Once again, a special teamer. Maybe this is our kickoff specialist, but I actually do see him having some success in our receiving core because of right now, receiver 4 is open. Johnny Wilson's there, but it's up for the taking. So at least our first 3 receivers are solidified. I know it's a late round pick, but 4'3", 6'1". What else can you ask for from your last pick in the draft? So, so that's it for the Eagles draft. Zach, you have another pick for the Eagles?
Yeah, so this draft is pretty filled with great running back depth, right? So I don't think the Eagles would mind. I think they would look to add a running back in this draft, just with the changes made during the offseason. Obviously, Kenny Gainwell is no longer with the team, and that is actually going to cause an impact. I know some fans may not feel it will, but I think it definitely will. So when you're looking at replacements, the guy that I'm looking at is Taj Brooks, right, out of Texas Tech. Just an absolute thumper of a running back. You're talking about a guy who's 5'10", 230, right? This is a big boy, right? So this is somebody who, we talk about these short yardage situations. What does the future of the league look like? Is tush push going to be banned? Is it not going to be banned? Who cares? We got a 230-pound running back coming through the guards right now. So you talk about a guy like Taj Brooks. This is a short yardage specialist. Kenny Gainwell did a lot of that work with inside the 20, inside the red zone. I think this is an area where you could see him potentially grow into that role. Where you have Saquon Barkley, who's obviously your talented, every down back could be, but you do want to spell him a little bit. You have now Taj Brooks, who can be that kind of real big, heavy target in between the tackles, who kind of pairs perfectly as like the thunder to Will Shipley's lightning, and somebody who, maybe he sits and learns behind A.J. Dillon for this year, because that's another big thumping type running back that the Eagles did bring in to kind of complement this running back core. So you bring in Taj Brooks, you let him sit on the practice squad. Maybe he's that fourth running back on the roster. He learns a bit behind A.J. Dillon, and he's ready to be your power back for the next 2-3 years after that.
Okay, all right. Now, Earl, you got anything? Go ahead, Mal.
Yeah, so I actually agree with Zach. My pick was Taj Brooks as well. The one thing that stands out to me, and I'm not comparing them at all, of course, this is a late round draft pick, but I remember the Giants when they had Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. Brandon Jacobs was 264 pounds. That guy would just level people when he ran. And I think that Taj Brooks has that same type of energy. And I just think it would be great for you guys, especially when you have Saquon, who is as dynamic as he is, as quick as he is. He, like Zach said, in those short yardage situations, you just bring that big guy in there and you tell him run and he's going. I would love this pick for you guys. I think, like you said, he sits on the practice squad, give him some time to develop, but you never know what you can get out of him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely bully ball. The last pick I had you guys getting Dylan Gabriel, quarterback from Oregon. He's one guy that I think would probably work well. He's a lefty like Hurts. And pretty much this guy through his career, he's done phenomenally with what he was able to do. This past season, he had 3,857 yards with 30 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, had an 86.4 QBR. And with him falling into the 5th round, they're really just debating his size. But him at 5'11", it shouldn't be too much problem. This guy plays with a lot of heart. He has a very leadership role when he was at Oregon, even when he was back at Oklahoma. And this guy, he's definitely a football player. And I think having someone like that, being able to be plugged with Hurts, who's a winner as well. Gabriel was a winner as well. So having those two guys mesh well, I think y'all got y'all 2 quarterbacks in the QB room that'll hold y'all from moving forward.
I don't hate it because, I like Dorian Thompson Robinson, but a lot of people don't. So I like it.
Yeah, we're talking about third string quarterbacks at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Zach and Maurice, is there any Eagles news before we jump into other team news?
I haven't really heard of any news over the last week from the Eagles, besides the silly Twitter X rumors of TJ Watt. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah.
Everybody's trading for TJ Watt. Haven't you heard?
I don't know where that came from.
Well, that's the thing. You're looking at a quiet off season. They're the reigning champions. Everyone's trying to drum up some kind of conversation. And the Eagles are going to be at the forefront of all of these top trade conversations. Myles Garrett, when that was the conversation, they were the top team mentioned for Myles Garrett. So that's not going to go away anytime soon. Any other players who are going to be discussed as potential trade candidates, the Eagles are going to be, among the top teams mentioned. If there's potential cuts as we get, closer to, post draft into camp, really post June 1st, they're going to be one of the top teams mentioned for any of these higher end free agents then. But it's been a boring offseason for the Eagles, and that's okay.
I'm
if
cool
you
with
ask
that.
me. It's been a bit problematic if you listen to some, mostly radio around Philadelphia. But it's been a bit problematic for some. But listen, like, this free agency class was not a great free agency class. Several of the Eagles players that they lost were among the top free agents, but only because they won the Super Bowl, which is admittedly a plus, and because the free agency depth was not that great. I mean, Josh Sweat is a guy who, when he came out of the draft, people were worried about if he'd still be in the league 4 years after he got drafted, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that there's no concerns with a guy like Josh Sweat. The Eagles moved off of who they did, Darius Slay, but they have depth and they have young guys ready to replace him. And more importantly, Howie Roseman is comfortable with his ability to draft players, as evidenced by the past 5 years. That's looked pretty good for Philadelphia. So the main focal point seems to be the draft for the Eagles. So I think that's what we're going to be seeing a lot more, interesting moves here and there, whether it's the actual draft pick selected. Maybe we work the trade market a little bit come draft time, but the draft looks to be the main focal point of the offseason for the Eagles at this point.
Yeah.
I agree.
Earl, it's actually been quiet on Dallas front, from what I could tell. Any news?
Emmitt Smith hasn't been, but otherwise.
I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah, did you hear about that, Earl?
Oh, I definitely did.
Okay.
That's for a later time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. The only news that I have right now is that it's in conclusion that the Great Wall of Dallas 2.0 has come to an end, where Tyron Smith signed a 1-day contract with Dallas Cowboys to hang up his cleats. He finished out his 14-year career with 8 Pro Bowls, as well as a 5-time All-Pro, 2-time first team. In my books, he's a Hall of Fame lock. And overall, through his 14-year span, he has had a 89% pass blocking grade, as well as a 90.8% run blocking grade. And that's pretty solid for him through his 14-year career. I want to say this is that Tyron Smith, you were a phenomenal tackle. You went from being a right tackle and shifted over to the left and held it down for years. I remember in my early years just seeing you get drafted, seeing your progression from right tackle to left tackle. I can't express how much being able to see you play over these last couple of years has been just a blessing to see, especially being that wall to be able to be Dak's blind side as well as Tony Romo's. But overall, have a successful retirement. Salute to you, brother. And you're a Hall of Fame lock, right along with Zach Martin. I digress.
Fair enough. Mal, Giants, some stuff.
Some stuff?
I think there's some stuff. Is there
I
some
honestly
stuff?
haven't heard anything.
Well, I've heard that Kayvon Thibodeau has been rumored to be on the trade block.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'm not sure.
I have a
but
hypothetical trade for you.
No,
I have
you
a
don't.
hypothetical trade for you. Yes, I do.
It's probably not a good one, but go ahead.
Just hear me out. You guys want to trade back up into the first round. We'll trade you the 29th pick for the 34th and Thibodeau.
We're not trading anybody to you, Lucas.
What?
It's not
Why
happening.
not? What, the
That's
Eagles traded
not
with
happening.
us? The Eagles traded with us.
Okay.
Hey, look what they got.
Look
Yeah.
what we got. We got pretty good too.
But yeah, no,
Anyway.
nothing really in Giants world. Just everyone fighting over the third pick as usual, but we'll find that out next week. And in other news, Malik Neighbors and Jaden Daniels lost their very close friend. So prayers out to Kyron Lacey and his family and friends. That's a tragic situation. But in other news, not really much in Giants world.
Yeah, pretty much you guys are scouting doing a private workout for every QB in the draft.
And everybody.
Yeah.
Meeting with everybody, whatever.
Yeah. Commanders, I haven't heard much. We had our Top Golf night recently, so that was a big thing last year. Doesn't feel like a big thing this year, but that's pretty much all I got. I don't really think there's anything huge going on in DC right now. But that being said,
shall we mailbag?
We shall mailbag.
Yes, and this week's mailbag is brought to us by the Dallas Cowboys. The boys.
Them boys.
All right, so I got 3 questions. First question.
Wow.
Yeah. So first question. Who is to blame for Michael Parsons' contract extension holdup? Oh,
Jerry.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, not Jerry.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm going to put this on David Mulugeta. I know he wants to
The
try.
agent?
Yes, sir. Because I think Jerry already this is the earliest I've seen him like work with somebody of a player like Micah all the way in April. You're trying to get the deal done, but I think the agent is trying to get as much as he can from the bag, especially with what Derek Stingley got. That's also his agent, and he wants Micah to get the max amount of his worth, which is understandable, but at the same time, it puts a halt, especially with how the front office for Dallas moves. But at the same time, I really think Jerry has the deal in place, but Mulugeta is the one that is pretty much holding everything. Where it's kind of got Micah in the middle, where Micah wants his agent to handle things, but at the same time, he wants his contract done so he can just fully focus on football. Micah's been in OTAs, the start of it. I don't know why as much of a headway of news of that, and people looking at Zach Martin, and he's like, oh, he can miss him, but if Micah misses it, it's a World War III. So, but at the same time, I think that when Mulugeta can really figure out what he wants to do and get the contract situation done, the earlier the better will be good. But I'm just hoping it doesn't get pushed to August, because that's really going to put a halt on stuff.
Let's not wait the morning of week 1.
Yeah, that's
like they
crazy
did with
work.
Dak. Yeah, that's crazy.
So,
Yeah.
Can I toss out an outside the box possible answer to that question?
Sure.
go ahead.
I think there's a chance TJ Watt's to blame for these contract
Ooh,
negotiations.
They're waiting for that. Okay.
They're trying to get that number, that TJ Watt number, and then just creep just a little bit north of that. And you think about it, think about Michael Parsons' youth advantage. It makes sense, Obviously, TJ Watt's a fantastic, outside linebacker, as is Michael Parsons. But you want to obviously be that top dog on the paid market, and for a guy who has that age advantage like Michael Parsons does, just waiting for that one last domino to fall before signing that dotted line.
No, I agree with that, Zach. And at the same time, I also know that Micah, he's really, one thing he did say, he wanted to have a little bit over miles on his contract. So I don't know, I'm not going to talk about the man's money or whatnot from there. I'm just to the point now, you know what your worth is. Go ahead and get that contract signed so you can focus on football. That's all I'm worried about. I'm not trying to crunch numbers or anything, but I want Micah to earn what his worth is, because you got two guys who can do what he does. One's in the Hall of Fame, and we got the other in that line. And I just want him to just get his money. So however you want to try to figure out and get it, so be it. Talking about team friendly, free agency is pretty much over. So you missed that window. So it's time now. Go ahead and get your money, get locked up. Because, he's a star till the end of his career. So, yeah.
Hey, listen, Michael Parsons is not taking a team friendly deal.
Even after he said that, and the free agency window is done. So
he getting paid.
Go get the bag, Micah.
Yeah, get all that.
877, pay Micah now. Dallas.
There you go. Now, second question. Should the Dallas Cowboys try and trade for cornerback Jalen Ramsey from the Dolphins?
Cornerback help is definitely needed. And for Ramsey, we'll see where his money is from that. But if they were to make a trade for it, it's either that Diggs is not at his best to come back. You got his Bland, you got Elam, who really hasn't shown progression even after a trade. So you're pretty much looking thin. You got Bland, and then you got the outside from there. You got Kalen Carson, who pretty much everybody's not on board with. But at the same time, he's still going in his second year. He can improve. But I think if you really want to get the fan base where they need to be, especially with the assurance of corner, see what you can try to do to trade for Ramsey. He'll definitely be someone that can be just in service till Diggs get back. And if you can get him, Diggs, and then Bland, you got a solid corner room. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Draft day is going to be interesting.
I just don't know if you guys can afford him. But
hey, man, we got a little over 40 mil, close to 50 mil on the cap. So depending on what Micah gets, it'll free up 18 of it. So I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. All right, last question. What is your stance on Dallas Cowboys Nation for this upcoming season? Essentially, how do you feel about the fan base going into next season?
Okay. Cowboy Nation. If you're really a Dallas Cowboy fan, rise for your team. If it's one that you feel like you disagree with the team, you may not be a true fan. There's a lot of stuff going on with the moves that's happening this season. Give it a try. Don't knock it till you try it. But at the same time, if you're constantly keeping out that same narrative as a 3-letter and 4-letter networks, then you're none but a fickle fan. So the real Cowboy Nation, those who stand by the team and represent the blue and silver, and it's in your blood, that's you guys. Those who are taking that title and not fully mean it, y'all can leave. I digress.
See ya.
Well, Earl, you can't really digress because your segment's up next.
Oh, it's already that time? Oh.
Yes, sir. It's that time.
All right, man. I don't know if I got like a funny thing to go along with it. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Throw something out there.
All right, hold on. It's time for Who's That Football Player? Fly, Eagles, fly.
Yes, sir.
This football player played with the Philadelphia Eagles. Back in the 1995 season, this player threw for 2,326 yards with a 57.3 QBR with 8 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. He also had 32 carries for 147 yards and 1 touchdown. Mal, myself, maybe Zach. Who's that football player?
Anybody got a guess?
I do.
I'm stuck, but I'm gonna go Randall Cunningham.
Zach, do you got a guess?
Did you say it was 95?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
See, here I was born, so this is going to be a tough one for me.
I know I was born in
Randall's-
'96.
If Randall's already said, I'm going to try and be different. I'm going to go Rodney Pete.
Earl?
I was born 91, so I know this player. Nice try, Maurice. Rodney Pete.
It's Rodney Pete.
Yeah, no. Earl said Rodney Pete on the, name a random
Yeah,
QB.
I thought he was answering it.
Yo, that
was
is
just
crazy.
like-
It was like I did that, and then I saw the Who's That Football Player. I was like, is Maurice serious?
You know what was funny is that when Maurice sent me the player, he was like, I'm trying to stump Earl on this one.
Man, I thought I had him. Zach, if you don't know, Who's the Football Player is basically us trying to stump Earl. Because Earl gets them all right, except for like 2.
I'm probably around a
Yeah, I bet.
98.5% of player knowledge. I love football, and just knowing the division as a whole was definitely one that I've learned at a very young age. So, yeah,
That's me in the
just love
NBA for sure.
man.
All right, so Mal, I think we had 2 poll questions this week.
Yeah, the poll question is brought to you by the New York Giants. Outside of Cam Ward, which QB prospect should the New York Giants draft? Shador Sanders, as Lucas wrote, Jason Dart. Jalen.
Oh, did I miss the typo that? Oops.
This man be butchering
My
names.
bad.
Jason Dart.
Jason
bad.
Dart, Jalen Milrow, and Tyler Show?
Show?
Shoal. I think it's Shoal.
Yeah, you
I think
put
the
Show.
Louisville quarterterback.
I was going based off of what it was spelled on
Honestly, it's all good. But most people said Shador Sanders.
What's crazy is I'm getting more traction from Milrow to the Giants.
Yeah.
A
Really?
lot of people are starting to like Milrow, and
Hey,
if
that
you're trying to
4.3
get a
speed.
when you did the mock draft, you said Milrow at the time. I dismissed it, but then I thought about it. I'm like, he is kind of like a Josh Allen-esque type build
Yeah.
and skill set coming out of college. So like, I could see it. I could see Dable wanting to go that route.
He's definitely
Yeah.
run first though. You definitely can work on his
Yeah, he
throwing
is.
mechanics though.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, look, like I said, that game that I saw him against, get benched against South Florida was not a good impression on me.
Nah, but did
I
you
I
see
mean,
that
who
game when he
wins
played
with a
against
running
LSU?
quarterback who played for Alabama who got benched? I mean, it's only
Yeah,
easy to do that,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
When you put it like
happens,
that.
Yeah.
He's
All right.
an extreme talent, though.
So
I think
what
he'd
was
be
the
great.
NFC East question?
Yeah, the NFC East question was, which NFC East team should sign Amari Cooper? Obviously Eagles, Commanders, Cowboys, or Giants. And most said the Cowboys. You want him, Merle?
Yeah, bring
I
him
know
back.
he does.
Bring him
Oh,
back.
you do?
Come
Bring
on
him
home,
back.
Amari.
Bring
Oh,
him
he
on
wants
back.
him back. Yeah,
Look,
I know that.
we need to secure up that wide receiver 2. I don't trust it if we don't have that wide receiver 2. And CeeDee Lamb's the 1. I can see Amari as the 2.
I think he's
Like-
washed.
I think he's washed
The-
too.
If you get him in the right scheme, I think it'll
Mm.
work. Like, I'm not. People said that about Keenan Allen. And if you look at his tape, it doesn't show he's washed. So it's just depending on the scheme in that. I'm cool with either Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper. Whichever one, bring him to the star.
Okay.
All right, well, it's time for team trivia. This week it is Washington Commanders / Redskins. And the question is, who had the most touchdown receptions for the Washington Redskins during the 2009 season?
You said rushing touchdown, right?
No,
Receiving.
receiving
Receiving,
touchdowns. Earl, I'm going to wait for you last because you ruined this half the time. Zach, who do you think it was?
Man, 2009, you said?
Yes,
Yep.
receiving touchdowns.
Santonio Holmes.
Santonio Holmes never played for us. Oh,
You mean Santana Moss?
No. Who's the one dude?
Randall L? No, never.
Randall.
Um,
Who you th-
Well, whoever the right answer is, that's who I said. Just mark me down.
Okay.
Mark me
I
down.
like
to
that. I like that. Mal, who do you got?
I'm going Santana Moss.
Maurice,
Moss.
Earl.
Fred Davis?
I hate you so much.
What the
What?
heck, bro?
Ooh.
Tight end.
It
he had
was so
6
close. He had
touch-
6. Santana Moss had 3. I remember that vaguely because the Washington team went 4-12 that season.
It was not a good season.
The
It was
Washington
brutal.
team.
Wow, I forgot
Yep.
about Fred Davis. Fred Davis was a really good tight end for like
Fred
2
Davis.
He
years.
I love-
was.
Fred Davis was one of my favorite players. I'm not gonna lie.
Like
during
2
that
years,
time.
he was good.
Yeah.
Nice try,
Anyway,
buddy.
thanks for ruining that one. Earl.
Oh,
I
you're
thought
very
I had
welcome.
you on that. I thought
Got
I had him on
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
I got him. He thought he was trying to box me, but I got him. Uppercut.
Oh
got
my
him.
gosh. Anyway, so on that note, just Zach, thanks again for coming on. Again, we
Thank you.
appreciate you,
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
Zach.
Yeah, thank you, Zach.
Oh, thanks for having me. I had a blast.
And just to give before Mal or Maurice, whoever is slated to do it this time, I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the agenda for a second. Just want to give everybody an announcement here. We are not recording normally Tuesday next week like we normally do. We're going to wait and have a live episode via
Woohoo!
the draft on Thursday night, starting, I would say, probably about 15-20 minutes before the draft and going through the full first round. We're going to be tired. We're going to be cranky probably towards the end, but you know what? We're going to give you content because that's what we are here to do. And you get to see our raw reactions. You know, last year when we did the Twitter space, Earl talked about punching holes in walls, so we'll see what happens.
For Tyler Guyton.
For Tyler Guyton, yep, I remember that one.
Yeah.
So we'll see what
Iconic.
happens this time. We'll see. We'll definitely have it on YouTube. We'll see if we have it also on Twitter, Twitter /X, Facebook. I think there's other ways for us to stream it. I have to experiment with that, folks. But me and Mal will probably make a quick video Sunday afternoon talking about and posting it so that you guys know exactly how to find us next week during the draft.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Before you
Maurice,
do
you
that,
want to wrap up, or you want me to wrap up?
I can wrap up. Before we
All
go,
right.
though, want to say once again, Zach, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Where can our listeners find you, and where can they find your content?
Yeah, sure. So you can find our content on Metro Philadelphia and also Philly Sports Network. They're both related, so either way, you're gonna be able to find it across both places. But and I'm the beat reporter for the Philadelphia 76ers for Philly Sports Network. I'm also one of the hosts for the Eagles podcast on Philly Sports Network, Flipping the Birds. You can find that on the Philly Sports Network YouTube channel as well. And then you can find a lot more of my content on Metro Philadelphia as well.
All right. Once again, thank you. And you want to thank all the listeners out there for listening to this podcast this week. Please consider subscribing to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. And also check us out on YouTube. You're probably watching this video right now. We have other clips on there as well. Our YouTube exclusives, which you can also find Zach on Fully Cooking with Maurice. We also have Barbershop Talk with JT, DC Football 101 with Mr. J, and New York Giants Forecast with Mal. So check out all that on our YouTube channel. Subscribe and give the videos a thumbs up. Make sure to follow us on Twitter or X, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Facebook at 13_Rings Podcast. Until next time, have a good day.
Adios.
Bye, y'all.
Blessings.